For this assignment, we've been tasked with implementing new visualization functionality for instructors. This has two parts. The first part is a tabular view that will let instructors see various different things about the class and the assignment. This will, for instance, let them see how many reviews students wrote, how long the reviews were, how well the reviews were received by those who were being reviewed, and the various different grades that they received. Additionally, and perhaps more interestingly, we've also been tasked with implementing a new table or some other way of visualizing at a high level how the class is done. This will let the professor see whether or not the class improved between submission 1 and submission 2 of an assignment, and will let the instructor see how much students struggled on various different rubric items. This will let them tailor the assignment in the future to come up with a better one for subsequent semesters. This will show how well the students did and where they struggled. Here we can see a look at the new functionality that we've actually implemented for this project. First, let's take a look at the chart. This is the biggest portion of this assignment, and it lets the instructor easily see how their class did. For instance, we see on rubric item 1 that the grades were reasonably bifurcated. There was only 2 grades that were handed out in the first round for this assignment. However, we can see by the time of submission 2, things had changed a bit, and the grades had gotten better. We can see this for each of the rubric items. For each item, we have the grades broken out in terms of how much of the class got a 5, how much of the class got a 4, how much of the class got a 3, a 2, and a 1. All of this is dynamic so that the chart will scale perfectly with the various different grades that are available for the assignment and the number of rubric items. Below, we can see the new table that we've implemented. This lets the instructor easily see for each student on an assignment the submission that they provided, how many reviews they received, the range of the reviews and the grades, an average, the author feedback they received, and the team member feedback they received. There's also a quick link to see the reviews that the author wrote and the final score on the assignment. If the author gave any feedback, this is shown in an additional column. While all of this information already existed within the expertise system, for the first time it's now all added in a nice, convenient table so the instructor can see everything at a glance.
So our functionality was primarily introduced in the grades controller under the view action. We implemented 4 private functions: calculate review questions, get team data, get high chart data, and generate high chart. So calculate review questions is a quick function that dynamically adjusts the min and max. It defaults to 0 and 5. We go through each questionnaire and we determine the number of review questions. If the min is smaller, we update it, and if the max is greater, we update it, and we return these. This gets passed to get team data, which goes through the questionnaires and dynamically pulls the team information into one huge array. This is then pulled into get high chart data, which then breaks down the data array that we've created by the rows and pulls each of the scores. These scores are then adjusted into data structure that's ideal for high charts and passed into generate high chart. Generate high chart has a total of 3 loops: one to get the series data, one to get the categories, and one to dynamically generate the colors. These are then pushed back into the view controller and then passed on to our view.
For the graphical user interface, we wanted to keep the existing functionality that existed on the page, but then reformat it so that it existed in a nice table format. Particularly, we wanted the table to keep the functionality of being pre-sorted by team, but then also include the function now that you could resort the table alphabetically by student name, and that is what we added. So we did these changes in the gradesview.html file. In particular, we added a series of headers such as reviews received and author feedback received, which are similar to what was already there, but instead of previously where we only had a single piece of information such as average or range in each individual cell, we now compiled all the relevant information into a single cell. So for instance, for any one of those cells, we have the range of scores received, we have an average of the scores received, we have the number of scores received, and a link to somewhere else in the application where you can see more information about it. This should allow the instructor to be able to both more easily see at a glance from the table format the information that it was conveying, as well as to be able to then also have a link to easily get to more information about it.
So all our tests are implemented in RSpec and test the grades controller. We set a bunch of factories in advance to make sure that we're doing it under the perspective of an instructor and have a bunch of assignments and questionnaires set up. So we test each of our 4 private functions. For the calculate review questions, we see whether we get the expected min and max for a default setting and the right number of questions based on what we sent in our factories. For get team data, we create a team and make sure that we can pull the correct participant out of that team that we created. And then for get high chart data and generate high chart, to decouple their performance relative to the other ones, we generate a data structure from scratch and make sure we get the expected output.